Hello and welcome to ShowMeAcademy.com. In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to create drop-down menus in Microsoft Excel 2007. Now, in my experience, when going through the spreadsheets that are created by others, one of the biggest gee whiz factors that people see is when they go through a spreadsheet and there are drop-down menus that they can use to select values. I often hear people say, how can I make my spreadsheets do that? So we're going to show you how to do that here. First of all, I'm going to select a cell, any cell, and I'm going to click on the Data tab. And once I've clicked on the Data tab, you'll see that there's this Data Tools section. And under the Data Tools section, there's this button for Data Validation. So I'm going to click that, and this brings up the Data Validation window. And under the validation criteria, I'm going to tell it to allow a list. Specifically, I'm going to create a list that it's going to use to determine which values should be allowed. And then once I'm here, I'm actually going to type in the values one by one, and I'm going to separate those values by a comma. So for example, let's just say that we have months. Now that I have those values entered and they're all separated by commas, I'm going to click on OK. And now notice that with this cell selected, I have this different icon to the right of it. This is basically telling me that there's a drop-down menu from which I can select my values. And when I click on this here, you'll see that the values that I typed in are here and available to be selected. If I try to put something else in, it actually gives me an error. It says the value that you entered is not valid. The user has restricted values that can be entered into the cell. In other words, we created a list. We said that you have to select from that drop-down list, and then I tried to type in something that did not match any of the values in that drop-down list. So it didn't let me. It gave me an error. Now that's one way to do this, by just manually putting the values in. But oftentimes, you'll want the values in your drop-down list to be tied to values that exist somewhere else in your spreadsheet. In fact, you may want to dynamically change those values from time to time. So let's show you how to do that here as well. I'm going to go here first of all to this column, and I'm going to enter some other values. And let's just do computer manufacturers. Okay. And now I'm going to go over to this cell. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go up again and click the Data Validation button. And again, I'm going to select from here, List. But this time, instead of just typing hard values into the source field, I'm going to select the values right off the screen. That's really what this button here means. You'll see this button a lot of different times in Excel, and this basically means that you can click on this button, and then you can go back to the spreadsheet and actually select values off the spreadsheet. So I'm going to click this button, and you'll notice that my data validation window gets much smaller. In fact, I can even drag it up here so it's completely off my spreadsheet. And now I have the ability to select items that are on the screen. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm just going to select the entire E column. And notice when I did that, it puts a formula up here. It says equals $E colon $E. Basically what that means is that's the formulaic way of expressing the fact that I have the entire E column selected. And once I've done that, I'm just going to close this window here, and it's going to bring up the bigger window, and I still have my formula here. And I'm going to click on OK. Now I have this symbol which indicates that I have a drop-down menu to select from. And when I pull it up, you can see that the values here are identical to the values that are listed over here. What's probably more important is the fact that the values listed here are going to be dynamic based upon whatever's over here. So if we added another manufacturer, let's say we had Compaq. Now we can go here, and you'll see that compact is now an option, because it is going to dynamically draw the values for this drop-down list off of whatever exists in the E column. So you can see that we can manually create the values for a drop-down list by just adding them all in that field, one by one, separated by commas. Or we can dynamically draw the values for our drop-down list by telling it to draw these values from somewhere else on the spreadsheet. That concludes this tutorial. Thank you for using ShowMeAcademy.com.